The 22nd of June, 1941. Under the code name Operation Barbarossa, Nazi Germany invades the Soviet Union, its ally in the war against Poland. Among the first territories to be occupied by Nazi forces is Lithuania, one of the three Baltic states that Stalin brutally annexed in the summer of 1940. By the time of the German invasion, 10% of Lithuania's 2.5 million population is Jewish, and the Nazis, assisted by local collaborators, quickly implement their plan to exterminate the Jewish community. They deprive Jews of their basic human rights, forcing them into ghettos, where they face extreme overcrowding, severe food shortages, and starvation. In the weeks that follow, Jews are beaten, tortured, and subjected to mass executions by the Nazis, who force their victims to undress before being shot and buried in mass graves. By the time Lithuania is liberated by the Red Army in the summer of 1944, more than 90% of the Jewish population is wiped out. One of the main perpetrators responsible for these atrocities is Joachim Hamann. Joachim Hamann was born on the 18th of May 1913 in Kiel, then part of the German Empire. By the early 1930s, as a young adult, Hamann witnessed his country facing a harsh reality. From 1930 to 1933, the Great Depression ravaged Germany, leaving millions unemployed. Trained as a chemist, Hamann himself faced difficulties finding a job. Widespread unemployment, combined with the national humiliation after World War I, fueled public discontent. Many Germans viewed the parliamentary government as weak and ineffective in addressing the crisis. The economic misery, fear of a worsening future, and frustration with the government's failure created fertile ground for Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party's rise. The Nazis promised to restore German cultural values, overturn the Treaty of Versailles, counter the perceived communist threat, provide employment, and return Germany to its rightful position as a global power. Like many others, Hamann was drawn to these promises, and in August 1931 he joined the SA, or Sturmabteilung, which was the Nazi paramilitary force also known as the Stormtroopers or the Brown Shirts due to the color of their uniforms. In December 1932, he became a member of the Nazi Party. On the 30th of January 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany by President Paul von Hindenburg. In July 1938, after several years of involvement with the SA, Hamann transferred to the SS. The Second World War started on the 1st of September 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. During the invasion, Hamann served in the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force. The early stages of the war saw rapid German advances in Europe, with the fall of Poland, the invasion of France, and the evacuation of British forces from Dunkirk in 1940. During the French campaign, Hamann served as a paratrooper, taking part in swift and decisive German operations. On Sunday, the 22nd of June 1941, under the code name Operation Barbarossa, Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union. Shortly after the invasion, Joachim Hamann arrived in Lithuania as a member of the Einsatzkommando 3, a subunit of Einsatzgruppe A, which operated as part of the Nazi mobile death squads. These mobile killing squads were tasked with the systematic murder of Jews, Romani people, and other groups deemed undesirable by the Nazi regime. To enhance the efficiency of these operations, Hamann was assigned to create a mobile killing unit which would subsequently be named after him, Rollkommando Hamann. Hamann initially recruited 8 members from his Einsatzkommando. The unit had no fixed structure, but primarily consisted of Hamann, his deputy Helmut Rauka, and an additional 50 to 58 Lithuanians from the auxiliary police forces, as well as anti-Semitic and anti-Soviet local policemen who refer to themselves as partisans. The unit was reassembled for ad hoc operations in various rural communities, and its primary mission was the extermination of the Jewish population in Lithuania. This targeted campaign had devastating consequences for the local Jewish community that had a rich and distinct culture, characterized by a unique dialect of the Yiddish language. Lithuanian Jews were influential in various Jewish ideologies, including the Jewish workers' movement, Zionism, and rational religious thought. Before the Second World War, the Jewish population in Lithuania was around 160,000, making up about 7% of the total population. Lithuania had been an independent country from the end of the First World War until 1940. In March 1939, Nazi Germany issued an ultimatum to Lithuania demanding the cession of the Memel territory, a region with an ethnic German majority. On the 21st of March, the Lithuanian government agreed to the German terms, and the next day, the foreign ministers of Germany and Lithuania signed a treaty. This treaty returned Memel to Germany and included a non-aggression pact between the two countries. In June 1940, the Soviet Union occupied Lithuania, annexing the country by August 1940. By 1941, the Jewish population in Lithuania had grown to about 250,000, or about 10% of the population, due to an influx of refugees from German-occupied Poland. Joachim Hamann and his Commando carried out mass murders of Lithuanian Jews from July to October 1941, particularly targeting Jewish communities in the Lithuanian countryside. Typically, Hamann's unit would arrive after local Nazi authorities and Lithuanian collaborators had already rounded up the Jewish population. They were often gathered in secluded areas, such as forests or remote fields, away from public view. Sometimes small temporary ghettos were set up for gathering the Jews from several nearby towns, and the Jews selected for executions were marched to the location, usually about 4 to 5 kilometers away from where they lived, and they were shot. One of the most heinous massacres Hamann and his men participated in occurred in the district of Utena, located in northeastern Lithuania. Before the war, the district had around 115,000 residents, with more than 10,000 living in the town of Utena itself, including 3,000 to 4,000 Jews. After German forces occupied Utena on the 26th of June 1941, the systematic persecution of the Jewish population began. Jews were subjected to humiliating forced labor, including dangerous tasks such as searching for mines, some of which exploded and resulted in severe injuries or fatalities. Within days, Jewish homes were marked with the label Jew, making them targets for looting and violence by local Lithuanians and Germans. Jewish men were imprisoned, women raped, and the town's synagogues and places of worship were desecrated. Rabbis who refused to burn Torahs were tortured in public, and synagogues were turned into prisons for Jews, refugees, and communists. On two separate occasions, on the 31st of July and the 7th of August 1941, the Jews of Utena were taken to the Rashis forest, about 3 kilometers from the town. Upon arrival, they were stripped of their belongings, forced to undress, and led to large pits that had been prepared in the forest. Women, children, the elderly, and other victims were lined up at the edge of these pits and shot, their bodies tumbling into the mass graves below. The executions were carried out with brutal efficiency by Hamann's death squad, Rollkommando Hamann, along with Lithuanian collaborators. Victims were often taunted and tortured before being killed, with soldiers taking sadistic pleasure in their suffering. Those who tried to escape were hunted down like animals, and some were shot on the spot if they managed to flee. During these two mass executions, 827 people were shot dead. Several weeks later, hundreds more Jews were brought to the same forest from the Utena ghetto, where for weeks they had lived in deplorable, overcrowded conditions, enduring hunger and violence. This group included 582 men, 1,731 women, and 1,469 children, all of whom were executed in the same brutal manner. Some historians estimate that Rollkommando Hamann was responsible for the deaths of up to 60,000 Jews in Lithuania alone. From July through August 1941, Joachim Hamann and his death squad were also involved in mass murders in neighboring Latvia. During this period, the Commando killed 9,102 people, almost all of whom were Jews, from the Daugavpils ghettos, located in Latvia's second-largest city. These atrocities were carefully documented by Hamann's superior, Karl Jäger, in what is known as the Jäger Report, which detailed the systematic execution of Jewish populations across Lithuania, Latvia, and Belarus. In his report, Jäger wrote, "I can state today that the goal of solving the Jewish problem for Lithuania has been achieved by Einsatzkommando 3. There are no more Jews in Lithuania." He then added, "The goal of making Lithuania free of Jews could only be achieved through the establishment of a mobile unit with selected men under the leadership of SS Obersturmführer Hamann, who fully adopted my objectives and knew how to ensure cooperation with the Lithuanian partisans and the responsible civilian authorities." Hamann left Lithuania at the beginning of October 1941, following the dissolution of his unit. In 1942, he participated in Operation Zeppelin, a scheme aimed at recruiting Soviet prisoners of war for espionage behind Russian lines to collect military intelligence and to counterbalance sabotage activities carried out by the Soviet partisans. To that end, Germans recruited thousands of Soviet prisoners of war and trained them in special camps. Operation Zeppelin had some success in the Caucasus, where the various people of the Caucasus aspired to become independent from the Soviet Union. But other missions, such as sabotage of power plants near Moscow or a plot to assassinate Joseph Stalin, were abandoned or failed. Back in Germany, Hamann continued to rise through the ranks of the SS. After the 20 July plot, which was a failed attempt to assassinate Adolf Hitler and overthrow the Nazi regime, Hamann was ordered to apprehend and oversee the execution of conspirators involved in the failed assassination attempt. He was also part of the delegation that visited Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, offering him the grim choice between suicide, in return for assurances that his reputation would remain intact, and that his family would not be persecuted following his death, or facing a trial that would result in his disgrace and execution. Rommel chose to commit suicide rather than face prosecution. Hamann was later appointed as an aide to Ernst Kaltenbrunner, the director of the Reich Security Main Office. The Second World War in Europe ended on the 8th of May 1945, but unlike Kaltenbrunner, Joachim Hamann never faced justice and avoided standing before a war crimes tribunal. He was 32 years old when he committed suicide on the 13th of July 1945 in Heikendorf in Germany. During the 3 years of Nazi occupation, almost 200,000 Jews in Lithuania were murdered, and only a few thousand survived the war. Over 90% of Lithuania's Jewish population was exterminated during this period, making it one of the most complete and devastating destructions of a Jewish community in any country affected by the Holocaust. There were no tears shed for Joachim Hamann.
Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.